I would like to call upon stage Dr. Arghya Sengupta. Rahul has already given a little bit of an introduction of Dr. Arghya. He was in the Justice Sri Krishna committee-led, on the Committee on Data Protection for India. Of course, he is the founder and research director at Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy, and his specialization includes constitutional law and digital economy. And Vidhi, as you know, is our knowledge partner in today's session. So over to you.
Thanks very much for everyone being here today. We are delighted to be co-hosting this with Sahamati. And a special shout out to my team, Manjushri Manvi, who are here, Shreya, Kanksha, who are not, who have put together this report on the basis of quite a bit of empirical as well as legal evidence. Rahul has really set the ball rolling in terms of what I wanted to say, so I'm going to avoid that bit, and I'm going to think of something that Pramod mentioned in a very early conversation that we had when we were looking at this account aggregator and what we can do, is what is our mental model by which we think about governance in this ecosystem. So Pramod, I've tried to do that. So my talk today is called the India Fractal, and this is a beautiful tree which is in the nature of a fractal, because I think that we need to start thinking about mental models of what, as Nandan spoke about, the change that is entailed when we move from platforms to protocols. But I'm going to come to this first, but without my imagination running wild, since I am a lawyer, let me earn my right to address you. So you have a bank account, but do you have an aggregator account? Now, why do I say this? Now, we know that on 11th August, as Rahul pointed out, the Digital Data Protection, Personal Data Protection Bill has now become the law of the land. It's obviously a watershed moment for all of us who have been working in the privacy and data protection space. But for it to be a real watershed in terms of the digital economy, I think we have to look at the levers that the Data Protection Act affords us. And one of them, as Rahul points out, is the idea of a consent manager. Now, the consent manager, as we all know in this room today, is essentially a unified interface where, as an individual, I can see, manage, review the consents that I've given, see where my data is going, and do all the things that, as an autonomous user of the internet, I should be allowed to do. Now, for consent managers to work, we have to make sure that we have the right architecture in place. And with account aggregators, when we were looking at this report, we found that there is a very natural synergy, because account aggregators present a live example. It's been around 2 years that it's been in operation, where you can see what an intermediary entity of this kind can look like and how it can work. So as far as account aggregators are concerned, the numbers are clear, and you've had about 15 million bank accounts which are part of this AA ecosystem. Now there's 6,000 crores of loan dispersals that have happened, and all this is great, and this is not to take away from any of that. In the first 2 years, this is a tremendous achievement. But if we have to take that next step, if we are to become customer centric, then what we have to think about as a customer is that I'm not interested really in whether the entity is an account aggregator or somebody else. I'm interested in an account. So just like a bank account, which is essentially nothing but a deposit of money, which became the symbol of financial inclusion and still is the symbol of financial inclusion for vast parts of India, in the digital economy, the account aggregator should now be seen as an aggregator account. And this also has relevance for the fact that I think the entity of an account aggregator will become cross-sectoral. It is cross-sectoral in some sense. So it has started in the financial ecosystem, and that's great. Under the stewardship of the RBI and the master directions, it has gone places. But now it has to become aspirational for citizens. It is something that citizens have to want. So what do citizens want? Citizens want a bank account. So in the digital economy, a digital Nagrik should want an aggregator account. So I suggest a change of terminology from account aggregator to aggregator account. And in this day and age, you don't even have to change the abbreviation. So that's great. I'm going to come to this in a moment. So what does this mean for us? So I think two things from a user centricity point of view. Nandan's slides pointed to the fact that the user has to be at the center. There are two clear things. We know that credit is the biggest use case for the account aggregator today. I think we have to do a much better job of selling it so that most people understand it and get there. We will get there in about 3 to 4 years. And second, taking off from something that Rahul said, is that now we know that what an aggregator account or a consent manager in the law allows is that it allows the individual to be in charge of her digital destiny. That's really the entire purpose and rationale of a consent manager under the Act. So what this account aggregator framework must do, and we have seen this with Apple, which puts privacy right at the heart of all it does. Apple is not interested in privacy because it's interested in the fundamental right to privacy in India. It's monetizing privacy, and that's great. And so we have to see as to how this account aggregator framework can put the individual at the heart of the digital journey. Now, from our report, and I'll let Manjushri continue with the details, there are 3 recommendations that I would like to place before you. The first is that account aggregators become licensed as consent managers under the Data Protection Board. Now, hopefully, now that we've gone through the law passage at a breakneck speed, hopefully the rules also will happen at a breakneck speed, though I'm not so sure about that. But when they do happen, account aggregators can get licensed as consent managers under the Data Protection Board, number 1. Number 2, Sahamati, which has done an admirable job in the last 2 years as a self-governance entity, also needs recognition under the RBI account aggregator master directions as the self-governing entity for this financial ecosystem. And I think that's the second thing that we have to look towards. And thirdly, to close the loop, because as Rahul rightly pointed out, there will be turf wars, there will be disputes between which regulator is there, which regulator is going to be responsible. I think the data protection rules should also have a reference to the RBI account aggregator master directions so that we can close the loop and ensure that Sahamati is seen as the governance entity for this ecosystem. But then what is this idea of the fractal? The idea is that this is the individual who is at the heart of this. That's the intersection set. Sorry, yeah, I do have that. So this is the individual. And this is how the data is flowing. It's flowing to various places. And we have various nodes and subnodes on this. And this is what I think a networked architecture might look like. And if I were to be provocative in Bangalore, as opposed to this, I think this is how we started. This is how we started, and this is the building block. And this building block is a part of the fractal. I mean, this is how the fractal can come about. I mean, India is now not only stacks, and there are multiple stacks, but we have to now start thinking about the horizontals that connect these stacks. And I think the account aggregators, the consent manager ecosystem is that horizontal. So what it essentially is, these account aggregators are these nodes. These are nodes where the data is flowing onwards. And a fractal, as you all know, is a set of infinitely repeating patterns. And this is exactly what is happening with our data. So my suggestion of this mental model, and feel free to please critique it and say that it's rubbish, is that this is the individual at the heart of the digital ecosystem. These are the aggregator accounts or the consent managers through which data is flowing. Currently there are many, maybe there will be multiple, maybe there will be one. I don't know how exactly it will flow, it will take different shapes, but it will continue flowing in this manner and create newer and newer fractals as we go along. The stack is also in there. It's in there, but the mental model is that we need to think of a networked architecture. And I think this looks a little more beautiful than a stack does. So I'm going to stop there, and there's immense potential to make the individual the real owner of India's digital journey. And I think we are at a beautiful place where consent managers are well poised to make that happen. Thanks very much.